chapter says, there was joy indeed in Israel. When the men get it right, everybody wins.
Yeah.
And when men get it wrong, everybody hurts. So we're going to work on men becoming strong today. And I want to help you remember some things from last night. You remember Transcendent Cause?
Yeah.
What's that all about? It's all about serving something larger than yourself. Your life isn't about you, right? He saw with the eyes of his heart. It wasn't about him. He wasn't looking for another ski boat. He was looking for the kingdom, a transcendent cause. There's a book you should read sometime, just for the pleasure of it. Reading is a big deal. I have an 8-year-old grandson, Wilson. And old Wilson, he knows that for every page he reads, he gets a reward from Papa. And if he reads a 250-page book, he gets $25. And so he's reading at age 8. He called and I talked to him on the phone last night. And he says, Papa, last night I read 4 chapters. And the week before I read 1 book in 3 days. He's 8 years old.
Wow.
And he's reading. And he's my little jock. He's got abs. He's got a six-pack at 8. You know, he's just special. And he loves Jesus already. His dad has a big, tender heart. And his dad's a big warrior. And Wilson's catching it. It's such a good thing to watch it flow down through spiritual heritage. And then, so, read. One of the books you should read is just a historical novel. It doesn't have anything to do with the Bible, except if it's about life, it's about the Bible, right? Stephen Pressfield wrote a book called The Gates of Fire. It's about Thermopylae, 480 BC. It's about the Spartan military system. And he tells a story in there about how every 14-year-old Spartan boy was given a mentor, an old warrior, to lead him through growing up and being a soldier of Sparta. And on one day of training, the 14-year-olds had a tough day, and one of them was killed in a training accident. And this is the first time 14-year-old Alexandros has ever seen death. And so he and Diakones are sitting around the fire at night, working through the day, his mentor, Diakones. And they're talking about what he experienced and what he saw that day. And then the concluding statement Diakones passes to the young man is this: Alexandros, if I thought this flesh, this body was mine, I could not advance a pace into the face of the enemy. But it's not mine. It belongs to my wife, and to my children, and to my nation, and to generations yet unborn.
Yeah.
Now that's a soldier who had a transcendent cause. Purely worldly in his case, but he understood something, having been created in the image of God, and he caught it. Transcendent cause. And then a settled memory. That's what this is. This is part of settling the memory. This weekend, as the Lord speaks to you and you settle some things with him, you make it part of that rock. And every time you hold this rock, I got mine in my room, I'm taking it home with me, and I will remember you, and I'll remember what we did together here. It will be very important that you remember. It's like a stake in the ground. It's like an anchor. Anybody in the Navy here? You were in the Navy, some of you. Anybody on a carrier? Carrier has 2 anchors. Then each one of those anchors, you know, those things are huge. They got a flight deck like 4 or 5 acres, something like that. 22 stories high. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know how much the ship weighs, but I don't want to talk about it. It's too big, you know. And they have 2 anchors, and each anchor weighs 60,000 pounds. Each one tied to the ship by a 1,000-foot chain, every link in that chain weighing 365 pounds. And the only purpose is to keep the ship from drifting. That's what a settled memory does for you in your life. It keeps the ship from drifting. I have some memorial stones I put in my Bible. These are some of my grandchildren. I open this book. I see why I'm alive. If I ever fail these kids, I will be the biggest failure in the world in my own mind. So I look at these memorial stones and say, Weber grew up. Weber served these kids. Weber keeps straight for these kids. Weber finished strong for these kids, you see. I have another one over here. I wrote here in the front of my Bible. Tuesday, February 11th, 1997, Glen Eyrie, Colorado. Promise Keeper Speaker Summit. My personal renewal and total recommitment to Jesus, his kingdom, my wife, my family, to prayer, to purity, and to ministry. That's a memorial stone for me. I flip it open every so often. It's my preaching Bible. And it's important to me. So you take those stones and you settle your memory. And then personal intensity. Remember Acts 21? Remember Paul? They came to him. Luke was amongst them. I'm going to read this to you. Luke was amongst them, and they said, don't go. Don't go. If you go, you're going to get killed, delivered over to the hands of the Gentiles. It's going to be miserable. Don't go. And Paul answered and said, what are you doing, weeping and breaking my heart? I am ready not only to be bound, big deal, but even to die at Jerusalem for the name of the Lord. And since he would not be persuaded, we fell silent, remarking, okay, the will of the Lord be done. You always hear Paul saying, well, thank you. You know, I'm going. And if I die, so what? You know, that's that personal intensity that we all want to have. And then unflagging optimism. Remember what James said. Hey, count it joy, brothers, when you run up against crud and trial and temptation and stuff. Count it joy. Don't think of it as misery. Put it in the asset column, because that's where you grow. When you're up against adversity, when you're up against trial, when you're up against temptation, that's where you grow. Take the bullet and grow. You see? Put it in the positive column. Don't look at it as misery. Look at it as opportunity. That's that unflagging optimism that the Scripture talks about. And then there's that deep camaraderie. That's where we're going to go today. Paul, we don't know a lot about Epaphroditus, but we know this. Paul said, you hold this brother in high regard, and men like him, for he risked his life for me and the sake of the gospel. He is my brother. He is my fellow worker, and he is my fellow soldier. That's that deep camaraderie. That's what we want. So we're going to go there today. I mentioned last night, in a little different form, God gives us 3 growth agents in our lives. He gives us His Word. There is no other book like it in all the world. Study, study, study. But don't just be a Bible studier. Be a Bible doer, you know? Next time they say, let's have a Bible study, you say, yeah, let's have a Bible doing. You know? Let's do it, okay? Let's do the Bible. That's the theme of our church. Little old Garland Gabbert in his 70s when we started as a church, we didn't know what denomination we'd be, and I thought we'd be this or that. The other people thought we'd be this or that. We said, what should we be? And little Garland stood up. He said, you know, I've walked with Jesus for 53 years now. I've been about in every denomination, and let's just do the Bible. And that's what we became. We became a do the Bible church, you see. Now, we're as imperfect as the next people, you know. I'm part of it, for goodness sakes. That tells you how imperfect it is. Good grief. You know, the older I get and the closer I walk with Jesus, the more I stink. You know what I'm saying? Because I see more of myself. And he says, yeah, I was waiting for you to get there. You know, pass that one over. It's a good thing. He gives us His Word to grow us up. He gives us His Spirit to rule in our hearts and to prick our minds and to prick our conscience and say, turn left and go here and don't do that. You know, He gives us the Spirit. And He gives us His people. This is His people. And the local church is about everything. He gives us His people. Those are the 3 change agents. And I think I mentioned last night, when I'm messed up, the Bible, I don't read it the same way. Oh, I sit down and try, but it's just words on a page. And I can quench the Spirit when I get carried away with myself and thinking I'm a victim. You know. But I can't get away from my friends. That's what we're going to talk about. I've got a list of guys here in my notes that were friends of mine in seminary. They were not your average Christian guys. By that I mean they were totally committed. They gave 3 years of their lives and a lot of money to study God's Word and see the growth and change. And they went into ministry. And all of them are not in ministry today. Here they are. There's Dean, and Brian, and Steve, and Neil, and Don, and it goes on and on and on. And it's not because they were bad men. They were men just like me. My name's not there by the grace of God. But every one of those guys was a Lone Ranger. Every one of those guys hadn't given their soul away to another man or 2 or 3 or 4. And so they didn't have the warriors. When they started to drop in battle, they didn't have anybody heavy enough to carry them away. You see, like my friend Gary said. So that's what we're going to work on today. We're going to work on the power, the sheer spiritual power of a deep soul-to-soul masculine friendship, which we all need. But we're the most, this masculine half of the race is the most, we're the slowest at relationships. Have you noticed the women? I mean, they start like this, and eventually they go deeper and deeper and deeper because they were made in the context of relationships. Remember Genesis 2? It's not good for you to be alone. I'll create a helpmate suitable. So the women get relationships quicker than we do. Listen to David Smith, friendless American male. Men find it hard to accept that they need the fellowship of other men. The simple request, hey, let's have lunch together, is likely to be followed with a response. Sure, what's up? What's the agenda? What's on your mind? What are we doing? I got to check it out. What's up? The message is clear. The independent man doesn't need the company of another man. In fact, the image of the independent man is that he has few, if any, emotional needs. That's a lie, and we all know. But we act like it's not true. Therefore, men must manufacture non-emotional reasons for being together. A business deal must be discussed, or a game must be played. Men often use drinking as an excuse to gather. Rarely do men plan on meeting together simply because they have a need to enjoy each other's company. Last night, I'm laying in my room, it's 10:30 at night, and the phone rings. It's Steve Keels. Ha! Just wanted to hear your voice. Steve Keels holds me up, and I hold him up. We'll talk about that. Even when men are frequently together, their social interaction begins and remains at a superficial level. Just how long can conversations about politics and sports be nourishing to the human spirit? And I love sports and I'm into politics, but who cares ultimately, you know? The same male employees can have lunch together for years and years and still limit their conversation to sports, weather, and politics. Holy cow. That's not manhood. We can do better than that. We can actually become friends. We can actually fall in love with one another. And by God's grace, we're going to. So what I want to do is look at some of the intricacies that belong in any friendship, but particularly a masculine friendship, to kind of give us a target of how to find each other's hearts, okay? I want you to look with me at a friendship that's all over the Old Testament. It's David and Jonathan. So I want you to turn to 1 Samuel chapter 13, and we're going to walk through this friendship and see if we can pull some elements out. James, can you give me a drop dead time so I know where I'm supposed to disappear? I know what the schedule says, but I didn't get up at the time the schedule says. Do I get it? Yeah. And then if I ignore you, you can shoot me out. This is the message that is life-changing for me. As I told you last night, I wouldn't be able to teach you today if it weren't for my friends. So, here's David and Jonathan. It's a bad day in Israel. The Philistines have conquered them. They've taken all their weapons. This is Braveheart, 1000 BC, 2200 years before Braveheart. They've got hoes, they've got axes, they've got farm tools. And that's all they got. There's 2 swords in the whole country. Saul gets one and David gets one, and those are mostly ceremonial. It's just really bad news. Israel is crushed. And chapter 14, verse 1, the day came that Jonathan the son of Saul said to the young man carrying his armor, here's 2. Did you notice? There's always 2. Stay together and survive. Jesus said on his guys 2 by 2. Never go into battle alone. The Army Rangers tell you that. Yeah. The first formation in Ranger School. 288 of us standing in formation, already tested to get into Ranger School. And the old non-com in front of the formation scares everything out of us. He's just come from Vietnam. We're all going to Vietnam. We know it. And he just shivers our timbers. And then he says, and here's your first assignment in Ranger School. I'm going to break the formation for 10 minutes, and you will identify your Ranger buddy, if you haven't already done so. So we break the formation, and Louis Francis Poirier III and I find each other. We'd been together the summer before in ROTC summer camp at Fort Riley, and Lou Poirier and I became Ranger buddies. We became close because of the sheer adversity that we had to face. We had to cross the Yellow River once in freezing temperatures. You wouldn't think Florida could freeze, but that western panhandle can really freeze at Eglin Air Force Base. And our mission was to get across that river and meet somebody at a certain set of coordinates. And it's freezing, and there's just 2 of us. And so we put all of our rifles parallel in a little poncho, and we put all our clothes in there and everything, except our boots and our underwear. And we wrapped it all up so it would float, and we hit the current, thinking we were both strong swimmers. And that river beat us. It whipped us. We went downstream, gasping, and like a couple of drowned rats, crawled up a quarter of a mile, maybe more downstream on the other side, having thought we were going to die. And we found the other side together, and we hugged like this. 2 guys in their underwear. I don't normally do that. we embraced one another because we had actually depended on one another and probably actually saved each other's lives. That's what we're talking about here. So the Rangers say, never, ever go into battle alone. And that old non-com told us after we come back into formation, he said the next 9 weeks are going to be the toughest 9 weeks of your life to this day. You will go out together, you will come in together, and if you don't come in together, you probably won't come in at all. That's the way it was. And if the Rangers can say that, and they're just secular soldiers, how much more you and I who follow Christ? Yeah. Who is the member of the first small group in eternity, Father, Son, and Spirit. He never goes anywhere without his 2 best friends.